Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. It's Emily, your everyday light worker. And while what you're usually getting from me is cut and dry, boring stuff on, for example, the laws and federal regulations around the United States equal employment opportunity legislation, today we're going to get into some really, really juicy and controversial topics. We're going to be talking about the Netflix documentary or docuseries Harry and Meghan. It's a wild ride. So, in order to do that, I'm going to switch into a different persona, stepping out of that boring, straight laced, professional, lawyerly persona. And I'm going to introduce you to the ghetto princess. And like I said, we're going to get into some controversial stuff like what is racism and conversations on racism and how that works or really doesn't work. Um, and today we're just gonna do the tip of the iceberg, but hold on to your hat. It's gonna be a wild ride. We're also gonna be talking about the civil rights laws and things that happen in the United Kingdom. Isn't that a really weird name for a country? United Kingdom? It sounds really commercial, like the United Colors of Benetton. Remember them? Is Benetton still around? Benetton and that particular brand of fuckery. Trust, Benetton was and probably still is on that fuckery. What I mean by that is acting like they were building some kind of multiracial fashion utopia. Not, they were not doing that. I can absolutely guarantee it. I promise. I have been working in civil rights, social justice, diversity, and equity issues from the legal perspective for many, many years. And I know all of the tricks. And I know about this new propaganda where it's never racism. It's never racism. I know all about that and how that works. So let's get into it. Racism. The terms around it change. The faces dealing with it change. The agents change. But you know what never changes? Not in the 30 years that I have been dealing with these issues. Racism itself. Okay, so the ideas around it and how it is to be eradicated or even how it's to be maintained, that's a dialogue that is constantly in flux. But the conversation around racism, especially in this country, remains very, very elusive and very, very dynamic. So, in recent years, due to social media, conversation and the terms used to discuss it have changed quite a bit. Even I can't keep up with it, and I've made a career of providing evidence of it and bringing usually formal complaints, but ultimately lawsuits against it. But the conversation is very, very polarized now. So you have one group of people that have become very adept at engaging in dialogue around racism. And they've created all these new terms to discuss it, and they can be very dogmatic about it. So the result of that is that the other side is so frightened of these concepts as they are being presented that they're just simply refusing to have any kind of conversation about it. And they're taking it even further by threatening other people who do have these conversations. And there's even an attempt, and this is happening at an alarming rate in this country, and I'm in America, on criminalizing people who attempt to engage in these conversations. So that's what all the focus is on public school curriculums and banning certain books. It's about shutting down any conversations that are engaged in on the topic of race. One way to do this is by asserting, very fervently in fact, that racism just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. What are you talking about? I don't see that. The police did what to you? Well, you just didn't follow the law. That's why it wasn't racism. We have a lot of that. So we see this come up in the Harry and Meghan docuseries because they both attempt to address racism as Meghan experiences that with the UK tabloid press. And as they attempt to address it, they're consistently challenged and told, what are you talking about? It doesn't exist. It's all in your heads. And so here's the really clever thing about the it doesn't exist motif. It's very gaslighty and crazy making to the point that it really could cause someone to lose their sanity, question their reality, and even become suicidal. I mean, really, it just makes sense if you think about it. It's not that far fetched. So think of it this way. I'm going to give you an example. If you were locked away in a small room to work, and a group of people entered it at random and subjected you to all sorts of violence, and they left you with these scars and these bruises, and you complain to people in authority, hey, I'm trying to work. I'm really trying to work. I'm trying to get my work done. But these people keep entering my workspace and they're harming me and they're leaving me with all these wounds, and I need to get some bandages. I need to go to the hospital. Something needs to happen because look, I'm bleeding. I'm hurt. And the people in authority would say to you, what are you talking about? There's nothing wrong with you. You look great. You're this workspace is great. People would love to be in your position, working where you are. We don't see that anything is harmful is being done to you. What are you talking about? Wouldn't anybody experiencing that go crazy after a while? That was what was happening to Meghan Markle. And you would go crazy if you weren't made fully aware of what was being done to you. And in order to do that, you would need to be in a community and have conversations with others that were experiencing the same phenomenon. And Meghan Markle wasn't in that kind of community. She was extremely isolated. And therefore, she couldn't reach out and gain any kind of awareness of the kind of psychological torture that she was being subjected to until she was able to get out of the UK royal environment that she was in. But of course, racism exists. It has existed ever since the British monarchy decided to create the concept of it about 500 years ago. And you can check out Chris Rock's comedy special entitled Selective Outrage to get a funny breakdown on that. He talks about Meghan Markle and, the British monarchy and how, clearly she should have been aware that this is what she was walking into. But, everybody doesn't know all the kinds of histories around every institution in the world. So, she wasn't aware, and she didn't understand what she was experiencing because of her lived experience. So you have to understand that everyone has different lived experiences, and based on these different lived experiences, you may not understand what you're experiencing. But racism, because of my career battling racism, I'm really familiar with how people will react to it and how it just keeps popping up. No matter how many times, it's like a really bad venereal disease, like herpes. It just keeps coming back, no matter what is done to try and confront or limit or change it. So we have right now a lot of people who insist that there's no racism. Even though in America we can clearly observe all these horrible, horrible things that happen to people of color, especially when they are dealing with law enforcement, and it doesn't happen to whites at the same rate. But at the same time, you're going to consistently hear that what's happening is not racism. And white people aren't racist. And then some people get really, really combative about this and are like, you're mistaken, take that back. So this is an endless mind fuck. It's a very gaslighty conversation that is usually going to happen if you try to push any kind of honest and authentic dialogue around racism. Because the best way for me to explain it is that certain people have extreme psychological blocks up when it comes to talking about that topic, and the psychological blocks are you can't really get through them because until the person does the psychological work within themselves. And a lot of times, if you're in a position of power with regard to racism, which is to say that you're either white and you're benefiting from it, or you understand how aligning yourself with whiteness is going to be to your benefit. And there are a lot of people of color who understand that. So they will say the same thing. They will say, it's not racism, because they understand that there is a significant benefit, usually monetary, in doing that. So they're definitely going to do that. So if you're trying to have an authentic conversation about racism, you need to understand this. Because if you don't understand this, you're going to be baffled. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to question your own sanity. And if you do understand this dynamic, you'll be better prepared to psychologically cope with it. Why does this phenomenon happen? And what can you do about it? Poor, innocent, naive, optimistic Harry and Meghan, at least on the concept of racism. They both were pretty clueless, and they learned the truth the hard way, the really hard way. And people who are biracial or have biracial children, that's usually how they learn, because they're concerned for their children. So, due to the assistance of very powerful and wealthy African Americans like Serena Williams and Oprah, who understand very well this phenomenon of racism and how it operates, because they were able to get out of the no situation that Meghan and Harry had presented by attempting to address racism with members of the royal family and the U.S. tabloid press. They helped them get out of that when for Harry, his own relatives wouldn't help him. So what Harry and Meghan didn't understand about Harry's relatives is that they are white, and not only white, they're like the whitest white people of whitery. This is what Chris Rock was talking about. This family, this royal family, they're not always the same royal family, because I think the Windsors are different from the Tudors. I don't know that lineage all that well, the European monarchy lineage, but it's not always the same family. The families turn over. But anyway, these are people who have been making hand over fist money off of racism, systemic racism, with their commonwealth and the countries that they have under them. A lot of oppression within those countries, and those are usually countries full of people of color. And they make a lot of money off of that. And all of this is addressed in the Netflix docuseries. So you can check that out for yourself. They're not, but my point is, if this is your reality, if you're a white person who is in this royal position of making all of this money off of this racism, you're not going to have a real conversation about that. That's going to be extremely, extremely threatening to you. So Harry and Meghan, let me save you a bit of time, a bit of heartache, a bit of grief, and let you know that this is why it's not going to happen. You can stop that tripping. It ain't going to happen. Now, I realize this is a really pessimistic view, not only of white people, but human nature. And I could be wrong. But if nothing else, I want to give Harry and Meghan quite a shout out, because they took on this huge David and Goliath legal fight against the Daily Mail in Britain that was just being extremely, extremely racist. and just flouting the laws and being like, I don't give a damn. And yeah, I'm going to do this really destructive thing to you, Meghan Markle, and I don't care. Try to stop me. And honestly, there are a lot of institutions like that. I see it all the time and try to uphold this nation's discrimination laws. There are people who are just honestly treated like slaves. They're treated horrifically at their places of employment. And, you try to bring a lawsuit against them. You can have all the evidence that you want to have. It doesn't matter. They don't care. They're like, yeah, and they're not going to budge on that. So Harry and Meghan, they brought that fight to the Daily Mail, and spoiler alert, they won. They actually won. All I'm going to say about that is, to you legal beagles like me, if you love to see a good legal fight where the good guys actually win and what is right actually prevails over what is easy and who has the most money, watch the Netflix docuseries Harry and Meghan, because it does have that in there. It's just a small part of what's actually in there. The docuseries is a lot of things. It's a love story. It's a COVID story. It's a baby story. It's a royal story, or a nightmare. Them royals, woo! They bring about a deeper appreciation for the Lord song. I will never be royals. I mean, real talk. After seeing what Harry and Meghan went through, I would never want it. All that glitters is not gold. But we're going to talk about it and how all hell broke loose at the mere suggestion that the royals might be a tad bit racist, just a smidge. And honestly, I find this to be the stupidest conversation ever that I've had countless times with people of all races. So I'm only going to say this once. We are all racist, every single one of us. Yes, me, and yes, you, wherever you are in YouTube land, you are racist. And some of you are extremely, extremely racist, and you know it, and you don't deny it, and you're proud of it. Racism, unfortunately, is normal. It's very normal. Take the Harvard implicit bias test. That's Harvard implicit bias test. It has, I might link it below, because I think it's just on the internet. You can find it and you can take it and find out how racist you are or how biased you are. And it's not an easy test to take, honestly. I didn't care for it, but I did take it at some point in time. It has provided time and time again tremendous evidence of the racism that we have all been programmed into by the society we live in. Racism is ingrained in everything that we do. It is the air we breathe. It's the water we swim in. It is impossible not to be racist. You have to work very, very hard swimming against the current, not drinking the Kool-Aid that everyone else is drinking. The only people who ever have a problem with the term racism, and I mean they really lose it, are people who are invested in maintaining the status quo ideals of white supremacy. And these people are usually, but not always, white. Remember that anyone can be racist. And by that, I mean anyone can have this idea that white individuals are automatically and innately superior to people of color. Some people want to delude themselves into believing in this illusion that life is the same or fair for everyone, regardless of race or gender or 1,000 other qualitative adjectives. And they say things like, I'm colorblind and I don't see color. And that just makes some people go, ugh. And these people don't always have to be white. And they deeply entrench in their beliefs about it, despite so much evidence to the contrary. This is confounding, but you're never going to understand this denial of racism from a logical perspective, because it's not logical. But in America, it's deeply, deeply embedded into what America is. America was founded on racism. It's written into our Constitution. So next video, let's have a chat about that. Why racism is just embedded in the foundation of what America is. All right, until next video. Talk to you later.